You want to learn about a march that affects the state's 600,000 school children? You'll meet one of the co-chairs coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Fox 43 studio. We're focused on the May 15th March for Education Equity, and we're visiting with one of its co-chairs, Rhett Jackson. Good morning, Rhett.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Thanks for making the trip early this morning in from Columbia to be here. I know so much is going on, and to know that we're a little more than 2 weeks from the walk.
That's true, and it's very important to me. That's why I got up and drove over here. We want to get this word out, and it's looking really good. I'm very excited about it.
And to think it was just a couple of months ago, Rhett, that the idea kind of propped up when you were, I think I saw you were here in a speech.
Yes, Steve Morrison was giving us a rundown of how poor these schools are in these 8 counties that the lawsuit is involved in, and Steve Morrison is the lead lawyer from Nelson Mullins, Raleigh, Scarborough, and they're doing this work pro bono. They're doing it for these kids that aren't getting a proper education. And when he outlined that at the end of his speech, he said, the state of South Carolina, the citizens, should rise up and march on this state house and demand that this legislature and this governor fund these schools properly. Well, that gave me an idea, but I didn't do anything about it. And then Warren Bolton of the state newspaper wrote a series of editorials asking for the march. And so I was sitting home one night and I said, Betty, I think I'll write a letter to the editors and see if we can get people's attention. Well, the thing kind of just started a bonfire. And I had calls from all over the state, really. Why don't you do it, Rhett? And I said, well, how do you do a march? So I called Lonnie Randolph, who is the state president of the NAACP. I said, Lonnie, do you know how to do a march? He said, I'm a pro.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So we met for lunch, and we talked about it, and we started making plans to do it. We set a date, and we set a date for a press conference. And then Nelson Mullins, Raleigh and Scarborough, asked Bud Ferrillo, who is, do you know this name?
No, it doesn't.
Well, he asked, the law firm asked Bud if he would pro bono do promotion for us. That's what he is, advertising and promotion. And one of the best in the state, really. He's got a great office and a great staff. And they're doing it for absolutely nothing. And they're spending 4 or 5 hours a day on this. Well, we wouldn't be where we are today without their help. Now we've got, I think, 54 organizations signed on.
Wow.
And everybody's excited about it. And we're marching on May the 15th.
Golly, a little more than 2 weeks away. And, of course, the excitement that day, rain or shine, you all will be out there. You kick off, I think I saw it, Zion Baptist Church. And it'll be walking up to the State House.
on Washington Street.
Right, on Washington Street. Now, a lot of our viewers, of course, in the PD and here at the beach, folks can travel from all over the state and will be, probably from all over the Southeast, to be at this event.
We haven't, yes, and certainly all over the state. A lot of churches are sending bus loads, and some of the schools are trying to get the legal permission to use school buses, and I think if they pay for those expenses, they can do this. But we're beginning to feel we're going to have tens of thousands of people there. We want this message to go to that state house, and it's been going on 100 years that these schools are underfunded.
100 years.
Yep. Steve Morrison said they started underfunding about 1903.
Is that? I had no idea. Now, this is principally just the 8 counties that the suit is regarded, or the entire state?
Well, mostly the 8 counties, but in the upper part of the state, up near the mountain regions and so forth, it's true up there. The state is supposed to give a certain per student fee to, for funding for these schools. And at this time, it's supposed to be $2,234 per student. Well, at this point, it's $1,820-something. And the State Finance Committee, yes, they were really bragging because they've raised that $30.
I saw that last week. I think Senator Leatherman spoke about that. I saw it in last Thursday's paper, I think. There was a little bit about that. Do you remember what you said he was bragging about?
Well, he said, I'm going home feeling really good because we put that about $30 back in the budget. And of course, the rich counties supplement this a great deal. Mm-hmm. The poor counties do not have a tax base big enough to supplement it. Mm-hmm. For instance, the per student total for Richland County is $5,600. And in these poor counties where they're getting $1,700, $1,800, they maybe can raise $1,000. But you see how the inequity in that. Yes.
That is terrible. So, of course, the state chips in a certain amount for base student costs, and oftentimes the wealthier counties will raise those amounts or help increase those amounts dramatically.
Yes, right. And the Greenville, Spartanburg, Charleston, and then I think Florence is pretty well funded, but some of the counties are very, very poorly funded.
Rhett, real quick about yourself before we get into the particulars of the day of the walk. Let's talk a little bit about yourself. Are you originally from the area?
Yes, I grew up in Florence, born in 1925. Old man.
Not that old.
And I was born with a twin brother, and he's still living too. He's retired president of Lander University in Greenwood, and his career started out in the Methodist ministry, but ended up in education. And I had some older brothers when I was born. There were 3 brothers older than me. It's a family of 6, and moderate income family. My dad worked for the railroad in Florence. Everybody worked for the railroad when I was a little boy in Florence. And he was a flagman on the Atlantic Coast Line. Great dad, and I had a great mother, and he taught me a lot. And then I went to Clemson my first year, and then the war was. This was 42, and I got drafted from Clemson and got sent to a naval program that happened to be at the University of South Carolina. It was an officers training program, and went there from there to a midshipman school in the Bronx, New York, and stayed in the Navy 3 years. Got out and finished school, and started my business career. I first started in the furniture business. I was in the furniture and then the carpet, and in 1974, I opened the Happy Bookseller in Columbia.
Oh, yeah.
And had a lot of fun with that.
That's a strong independent bookstore that's been there a heck of a long time. You said since 74.
Yes, 30 years.
30 years.
30 years, and independent bookstores have had a really tough time. We making it not as financially rewarding as it was before Barnes and Noble and Books A Million, but I tell you how the situation is in the book business. I was president of the National Association in 86 and 87, and we had 6,600 independent bookstore members, and now it's less than 3,000.
You in almost less than 20 years, you all have been shaved in half in the number of.
Really, in 15 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, some of these chains figure out where there's a successful independent store, and they build very close. We got Barnes and Noble less than a mile in one direction, and Books A Million less than a mile in the other direction.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Rhett. Well, of course, the impact of groups like Amazon and others probably had a pretty startling impact on your business.
It did, yes. And, you know, they don't have to pay sales tax in the South Carolina, although Governor Hollins is working on this. They should pay sales tax. But in many areas, they're not any cheaper than we are, but they got that 5% to add to where they discount. So it's tough.
That's a very interesting point. And some of the activities, so you were involved in the American Booksellers, the association that involved it. Was that only representing independent bookstores?
Yes, it was. Well, almost. B. Dalton had some chains in shopping centers, and they joined, and we kind of considered them kind of an independent because they were kind of local neighborhood stores. But this was all independent, yes. And I got some good friends. Even this week, one of my best friends had a great store in Colorado Springs, the Chinook bookstore, named Indian name. He's closing up after 50-something years.
Is that right?
Yeah. This closing this week. Yeah. So it's been tough.
Wow, Rhett. You know, one of our guests on Monday, Peachy Andrews, who was with us, an author there in Florence, I think he said that his book, The Nightlife is a Good Life, has been sold since the book came out at your store there, or the store. Now, you're no longer the owner. You've since sold the store?
I sold it a couple of years ago to a young couple, really nice young couple, and they're working hard. I think they're going to make it pretty well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think I saw a little write-up about yourself. You've also been very active in working to better race relations in South Carolina.
Yeah, I was pretty active in the civil rights days, and I got elected chair of a committee that back in the 60s we had two conferences in South Carolina, one black and one white. We had 50,000 black members and about 200,000 whites. And I was elected chair of a committee to merge those into one annual conference. And in the 60s, that wasn't an easy task. Right. But we got it done. Yeah. And I've been involved in other things in civil rights. I think we got one human race, and we ought to finally learn to live that way.
That's a great goal. It was fascinating. I visited with somebody last week who had a football scholarship to Wofford and played in, I think, the Shrine Bowl, and was talking about that year was the first year they were merging the races, and it was a big deal. And he was very happy, as the son of a Methodist minister, Tommy Britton, was very happy to room with a couple of young African-American guys who went on to do great things, and very exciting hearing about those opportunities.
Yeah, and I know Tom Britton's dad, he was one of our great ministers in this conference. Always on, in my opinion, the right side of things. Yes.
That's wonderful. Rhett, when you think about, of course, so many folks are interested in this event now, and to think we're a little more than 2 weeks away, coming up on May 15, what is it that's really prompted you to continue pushing forward, you and Lonnie Randolph there pushing forward so hard on this? Because
we've been thoroughly educated now on the conditions in these schools. The buildings are crumbling, coming apart. Some of the kids have to share textbooks. If they want simple things like poster paper or crayons or anything in the younger grades, the parents have to buy it. And many of these schools have parents on poverty level, you know, or just above, and they don't have that kind of money. And we got to break this cycle. I mean, this thing's been going on for 100 years. If we can break this cycle, we can educate these kids. They'll be educated enough to be able to go to college. Or the industries that need really educated people, they'll be ready for industry. And it'd break your heart to go to some of these schools and walk through them. I wish people would go to the courtroom in Manning, find out when they're hearing this this state case that Nelson Mullins is doing pro bono. And if they'll listen to some of the testimony there, they'll realize what condition many of these schools are in. And some of the schools are having to hire teachers that are not really qualified, although some of them have really good qualified teachers, but some of them don't have the training they should have. And we got to fix all that. I mean, the richest country in the world, we can't educate all of our people. It breaks your heart. That's why I'm very interested in it.
But who do you want to reach out to? Who do you want to attend the walk? Everyone, or are there certain folks you really need to reach out to connect with?
Well, we want everybody to march. Parents, grandparents, children. We want a lot of children there. We want to give the legislature a message that we're tired of this, that this state can properly fund these schools if they would just set it as a priority. And I don't know of any priority that's greater than this. And we've got great leadership in the march. Pat Conroy is going to be the Grand Marshal. And do you know the story of Pat Conroy and Dufusky Island?
No, share it with viewers.
Oh, this is a great story. Pat, of course, is a best-selling author. You know that.
Sure.
He finished the Citadel, and he found out there was a little black school on Dufusky Island that had no funding, and they didn't have a teacher. He volunteered to go over there for 1 year on a very small salary that the school board finally agreed to give him and teach those kids. He found out that some of them had never been to the mainland, and the mainland is just across the bay.
Right.
He asked some of them who the President of the United States was, and they didn't know. They didn't know who the governor was. He spent a year with those kids. He got field trips. He got money to charter a boat to take them in and out. He got money for school buses to take them on field trips. He was so dedicated. Then he got in a fight with the school board down there, and they wouldn't give him any more money, and they finally fired him. But he did get the year in almost. Well, he wrote a book about this called "The Water is Wide," symbolic of how close they were to civilization, but it was miles and miles for them. And then they made a movie out of that called Conrack, but it was based on the book "The Water is Wide." So he's just a great person to be the Grand Marshal with that kind of background and that kind of interest. And he's always been interested in education for children. But that's still, of all of his books, I think that book is the best book he's ever written. I hope the audience will go to you can still get it in paperback at bookstores, and of course most public libraries have it. The name of the book is "The Water is Wide."
The water is wide.
So he's the Grand Marshal, and we got Dick Riley as an honorary chairman. We got Inez Tenenbaum, the superintendent of education. We got Charles Bolton, the astronaut from Columbia, South Carolina.
Former Chief Justice Ernest Finney.
Famous. Yeah, he was famous, but
absolutely.
Also,
former Chief Justice.
And of course, he was acting president of South Carolina State for a while when we were looking for a president. And I served with him for 10 years on the board of trustees of Claflin College. He's a graduate of Claflin, but he is so interested in education. He just agreed immediately to be a
very active honorary co-chair.
Honorary co-chair.
There's so many amazing educators throughout the state, whether it's with a historically black college. Lund Richardson's been with us a number of times on the show, and it's so exciting to learn about the commitment that schools, whether it's that school or schools like Francis Marion or Coastal Carolina, that continue to make an impact. But we're talking about educating the youth in our state, educating the 600,000 school children, which are thoroughly being underfunded in so many counties.
And you know, the legislature yesterday started a bill through, I understand it's going to stall, but to give vouchers for private school attendance. And you know, that's going to dilute the money that the state has for public education. And I don't think the state can support two educational systems. I know a lot of people would like to have some help to send their kids to private school, but I believe if you want your kid to go to a private school, you should pay for it. The state can't pay for two systems. And that's one of the things we're marching for.
Rhett, why would an employer be interested in the March for Education Equity?
Well, for many reasons. He'll be looking for people all through the years that are educated and well-informed and that have an education enough to be a good citizen. And so this any kind of employer, manufacturing, business, retail, they all need educated people, and they should be very interested in this. And we had, I had an educator a father send me $1,000 the other day, which we need some contributions because Lana and I took this thing on, and we got about $10,000–$15,000 worth of expenses, sound systems, insurance in case anybody gets hurt on the march, literature. We're getting some bumper stickers ready, and I want to mail you some, see if you can get some distributed around in Myrtle Beach.
I'm sure there are a lot of viewers who would be interested. If someone was interested in learning more about it leading up to Saturday the 15th, what's the best number someone could call, Rhett?
They can call my cell phone number, and I'd be glad. I keep it on all the time. It's in the car now because I didn't want it to ring
right while
I was sitting here. But it's 803-429-9570.
Okay, 803-429-9570.
Yes, and if we can get that posted, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Or they can email me, and I'll try to say that slowly.
Yeah.
It's R, small case letters, R. Jackson, and then the number 46, R. Jackson 46 at sc.rr for Roadrunner.com. And I would be glad to hear from them, and I'll answer them. I'm getting about 20 emails a day.
20 a day? How do you have time to answer any of them?
Well, this is the full-time job.
Yeah, this is.
I didn't realize, and then I get telephone calls all day. But I'm really excited about it. People are really turning on to this issue.
Rhett, we got about 5 minutes. You know, you think back to, I think you said you were watching TV, and you turned to your wife and said, I think I'll do something about this. Am I correct? You said you were watching something, or
Yeah.
of course reading some editorials, and then seeing what Warren Bolton's done to help get the word out.
Warren and the state newspaper have been absolutely wonderful. And the state newspaper, you know, is covered pretty well all over the state. And we had a press conference, and we got stories in 12 different newspapers. But I was in Calumet Gardens at Hartsville with my son from Alaska Monday, and a man came up, and we just had a casual conversation. He said, well, I'd like to know who you are. And I said, I'm Rhett Jackson. He said, oh, you're the man starting the march. Well, that really made me feel good, because this man ran a dairy farm in Bishopville that the word had gotten, you know, down there in the country.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm excited.
You've got to be. What are y'all? I mean, I don't know what could top it after the event on May 15th itself. And starting it off at Zion Baptist Church there. How far is that for viewers here in the PD or on the Strand that aren't familiar exactly with that location? How far is the march going to be?
That's a good question, because Chief Justice Finney asked me yesterday. He said, how far have I got to march?
Yeah.
I said, it's only about a mile. He said, oh, I can walk that far. But Washington Street, the church on Washington Street, is 4 blocks over from Main Street. So we'll march to Main Street, and then we'll turn right and march to the Capitol. It's the same distance and the same place that we started the March Against the Flag a few years ago. But it's less than a mile, and we're going to have facilities. We're going to have, by the way, we're going to have tables for people to register to vote, because the ballot box is our secret weapon in case we don't get the legislature to act. We're going to ask everybody to find out whether a senator or their House member stands on this issue. And if he or she is not with us, we go into the ballot box.
Rhett, I think I saw that the Greater Columbia Chamber of Commerce is on as one of your organization co-sponsors. That's a pretty big deal. How's the Chamber of Commerce there wrapped around this, but at the same time probably help work on the income tax side of recognizing small businesses?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, because we want the legislature to know that business people are involved in this because of the same thing we talked about. Dollar Moore just signed on, and she's sending us a contribution, which is helpful. And we're getting a lot of the big companies to sign on. Can't announce them yet, but they realize how important it is to educate these children. And so we were real excited when Ike McLeese, who is the head of the chamber there in Columbia, called us and said that they were in. They were fully behind it.
Rhett, we got about 3 minutes. What if the march is successful? How will it be recognized as being a successful event? What can be done afterwards that would help recognize that it was a successful event?
If the legislature would finally get together and figure out a formula that would properly fund all schools, take these counties that are very poor, they're going to have to give them a higher supplement than the rich counties, because there's no money there to supplement what the state gives, and the state doesn't give a whole lot of money. That's what we hope, and we hope that the governor, who doesn't seem to me to be very much interested in public education, he's behind all these vouchers, we hope the governor will finally see the wisdom in strong public education.
Well, now, Rhett, there's also, aside from the inequity of funding for the poorer counties, the case that Nelson Mullins is pushing, there was that base student cost that would be needed of around $2,200 now, where it is currently at actually around $1,850 or so.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a big deal that affects all counties.
Yeah, and if you multiply that difference by the students in the state, that is a lot of money. But you know, they could get this money from the lottery. That's what they promised us. This money would be used for K-12 through 12. But most of that money is going to scholarships for college for kids that really don't need the money. Well, I'm sure some of them need the money, but they don't need it as much as these kids need it in these schools.
I'm not going to touch that subject, but at the same time, it's so important. And lastly, Rhett, if you weren't currently spearheading this march for equity in education, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
I got a little fish pond in Calhoun County, and I'd probably be sitting there fishing. Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, but I'm involved in a good many other things in the community. Community Relations Council, which is formed to bring people together of all colors. And I got a good many things going, but this is my priority now.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Rhett, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Well, I enjoyed being here. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Rhett Jackson coming up next. When you're talking about the future of South Carolina and its children, you'll see why our guest, Rhett Jackson, gave you his mobile number to talk about anything you need to know for the march on May 15th. They'll be gathering from 8 to 10 at Zion Baptist Church. The walk will kick off at 10:30. Get to the State House around 11 o'clock. Everything will wrap up by noon. Get out there. The demand is for equitable education for all of our state's children.